This is Coach Lee, and in this video I'm going to talk about some of the stages that you go through during no contact after you've been broken up with. Click the subscribe button below so that you can be notified when I have more content like this that's helpful to relationships, mindfulness, attraction, breakups, marriage, and romance. So right after you've been broken up with, it's a very painful moment. It's a moment of shock. What you are actually feeling is a loss of control, which control is an illusion anyway. We feel that we have control over things in our life, and we actually don't. We have very little control over anything. Some things we have some control. We have some decision making. We have some power. But so much of life is a house of cards. And you have learned that, unfortunately, if you've been broken up with. If your boyfriend or your girlfriend has left you so they don't see a future with you, they don't feel what they used to feel, or that they need space, time, a break. It's a moment where you really learn that you have no control. And that's what you're feeling, even though you probably couldn't put it into those words, and you may even wonder what you're feeling. It's loss of control, because this person, it seems like, out of the blue, has said they don't want to be with you anymore. It's very painful because it doesn't make sense. And so you feel like if you don't have control in this moment, maybe you don't have any control to get them back, and you don't know what the future holds. So you don't feel that you have stable ground to stand on. Now, this video is not going to just be, this is why you hurt, and these are all the negatives that you feel. I'm going to give you some solutions that can help you, and I'm going to show you how you can get your ex back, how you can have a good chance of getting your ex back. But we're going to talk about some of the things that you're feeling and why you're feeling them, because that will actually help you so that when you feel these things, you can say, this is why, and this is what I'm going to do about it, and this is the reality of what I'm experiencing, so that you can actually know if these emotions are justified. And sometimes all it takes is realizing what's going on in order for you to feel a lot better. If we can just make it better, you will be able to get through no contact, you'll be able to get through another day, and you'll be able to give yourself the best chance of getting your ex back and of becoming a stronger person. Another difficult emotional concept that you're dealing with at this moment is fear of loss, and that is that your ex may not come back. That's what you're afraid of. You're afraid that you could lose them forever. You could lose them permanently. It feels like the future is now, and you worry that you have lost them. That's why it's so important to make yourself take things one day at a time. Reel those thoughts back in. Reel those worries back in. You see, anxiety is when you worry so far into the future about things you can't control, you can't predict, you can't project, and it's just too much for you to be able to handle as a human being. I have a video about anxiety and how to get it under control after a breakup. I'm going to link to that in the description below, but take a look at my video about anxiety after a breakup. It's very helpful for this very thing, because you fear that you won't be able to get them back, that they won't come back, and you're looking so far into the future that you cannot handle it, because as humans, we are designed to deal more with the present. That doesn't mean that you don't plan for the future, that you're not responsible, but what it does mean is that plan for the future. But that does not mean that you agonize or worry about it. You do the best you can with the information you have at the moment, and you will alter and cross that bridge about changes when they occur, because most of the things you plan for, you have to tweak before you get there, because the future is anybody's guess. And so one of the things that I tell clients is, you have time. That's a primary thing you feel after a breakup, is that you have no time and you have to do something right now because they're falling away, they're getting away so fast, and you've got to take action, that it's urgent. And the opposite is actually true, in that you need to slow down, because if you try to treat it like it's urgent, it puts the wrong kind of pressure, it pushes them further away, it shows a lack of strength, a lack of confidence in yourself. It's the exact wrong thing that they need in this moment. They actually need to feel the space between you. They need to feel your absence, and that there's danger that you could get away, that their decision could be wrong, and that it could cost them you. That's what they need to feel. But see, when you feel that sense of urgency, that they're getting away, You project out into the future in fear that you're going to lose them. You actually do the things that help them feel like you are not going to get away. And so you do the opposite of what needs to happen in order to get them back. Another emotional difficulty, a painful feeling that you have is you miss them and you assume that since they're not contacting you, that they don't miss you. I get to speak to people who do the dumping. It's a minority of the people that I work with and that I've spoken to, but a percentage of people who break up with someone and want them back speak to me about it. It's how I developed the video about the stages that your ex goes through during no contact after they've broken up with you. I will link to that video in the description below. I'll also be linking to my emergency breakup kit, which is the culmination of 20 years in the relationship coaching service, helping people get back with the one they love. Take a look at the link to it in the description below. Get the emergency breakup kit. It gives you a plan to get your ex back. But in that video, stages your ex goes through during no contact, I talk about how your ex goes through a stage of relief. It's usually right after the breakup because they didn't want to do this. This wasn't something that they just did overnight. They didn't just go to sleep one night, wake up, and decide they're going to break up with you. Usually, it's a long time coming. And it's months, years sometimes, where they think about it, they talk themselves out of it, and then it just comes to a point where they feel like they are sure. Now, they're not sure. Most of the time, it's a slim majority of them that wants to break up, but it's enough that they do it. And that's where that doubt can be helpful. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But many of the people I speak to who did the breaking up will admit that they started missing their ex after that relief stage ended, where they're glad to get it over with. It was difficult. It was awkward. They didn't want to hurt you. Nobody says, I can't wait to go break up with this person because it's so much fun. And they feel relieved to get it over with, and they think they're going to enjoy life now, or they're going to move towards something that's better for them. But this relief stage, if you will leave them alone, usually is fairly quick to pass. And once they get out of that, they start missing you because you two had a relationship. You two have a connection. Some connections are very strong, and people just don't walk away unscathed, and they can miss you. And most of them tell me that they did miss the other person. And the ones that got back together, that was a primary factor, that this other person did not contact or chase and allowed the other person to miss them. But because they're not contacting you, you assume they don't miss you. And that's not the case. What will happen oftentimes is that they don't want to come to you and say, well, I think I want to get back together. And then you two get back together and they realize they were wrong and they have to break up with you again. They kind of had the idea, well, maybe it's just pulling the Band-Aid off and I need to go through this pain. But in the long term, this is what I want. You see, they're unsure. Now that uncertainty works to your advantage. It's a good thing. But it is usually not enough to get them to contact you yet. It needs to work on them a little bit longer. And so don't just assume, well, they don't miss me because they're not contacting me. Because I've spoken to people in agony who dump the other person and fear that they're losing them and they miss them, but they don't want to be in an on-again, off-again type of situation, which sometimes couples just keep finding their way back to each other. And on-again, off-again is not so bad because it means that you two just keep finding your way back and you can't stay away because of that connection. And those are the couples usually who have long-term staying power, because even most married couples admit that if they were just dating, they would probably break up several times over the years because they have these moments when it just doesn't feel right, or when they're not connecting, or they're not clicking, or there's depression and life happens, taxes have to be paid, bills have to be paid, children have to be disciplined, all kinds of things go wrong. But it's that rope of commitment and the difficulty of just dissolving it. So this idea that married couples, if they were dating, would probably break up some and find their way back into each other's lives, it's a concept people don't talk about a lot, but it's actually a good thing, because couples who just keep finding their way back, those are the ones who have long-term staying power. So don't think, well, if it's on again, off again, it must not be any good. That's not true. 20 years in this service has taught me that. And so giving this person time where they can miss you, and just because they don't contact you right away, and just because they're not contacting you at the moment, does not mean that they won't miss you enough, and that your silence won't be powerful enough, that they won't contact you. Oftentimes they do. Another thing you experience is fear of being forgotten. This idea that your ex will just start to experience this new life and won't even think about you or give you a second thought or wonder what you're up to or be concerned or curious about you. And that's just not true either. If you two had a relationship and you were together for a good amount of time and things were going well and you two connected well, even though there is difficulty now, your ex does not have the ability to just forget about you. I still remember people from when I was in kindergarten, first grade, preschool, when I was 4 years old, friends I had. Unless your ex has dementia and cannot remember things like that, they will remember you. And so, though it feels like they are going to forget you, and the temptation is, hey, if I contact them, it will remind them, it will maybe rattle the cage like an animal at the zoo who I want to move and do something. That's the illusion of achievement, the illusion of action. Just because you do something, it does not mean it's productive or helpful. And in this case, reaching out to them to remind them that you exist is fruitless. It will accomplish nothing for you. It will usually just cause a negative, and you will not be happy with yourself afterwards. So the idea that you will be forgotten, the fear that you will be forgotten, though understandable and normal, most people in your situation will go through something like that, but just know that it's not realistic. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Your ex could find someone new or move on with their life. In some cases, that happens. But it will not be because they forget about you. Before I move forward, click the subscribe button below so that you can be notified when I have more content that's like this for breakups, relationship dynamics, and mindfulness. And get more information on my emergency breakup kit that's linked in the description below. It's a powerful guide to help you get your ex back in a step-by-step process. And it's the culmination of 20 years of professional observation in the relationship recovery service. So the next difficult experience that I'm going to talk about that you often go through after a breakup is one you don't even realize. You couldn't even put into words or maybe even into concept. Basically, you don't know what's going on. It is a chemical drop from limerence. Basically, limerence, which I talk about in a video I have linked to below, is the scientific word for being madly in love. It's where dopamine is very high compared to its norm in your brain and in your bloodstream. And it feels amazing. It does fade with time. It doesn't go completely away, but it does fade with time to a level that your relationship needs to be based more on commitment, companionship, and that feeling of family, things that spring up from the shell of limerence. But if you are being faced with losing this person, that limerence experience can return. And what happens is that the chemicals kind of just go bonkers in your mind because you fear losing this person, which is actually part of limerence. That's why new relationships where there's a big connection, where there's intensity, will oftentimes experience incredible limerence because the fear of loss drives some of this, because you know that this is new and you don't know if this other person wants to stick around. And so you're getting basically a resurrection of some of those chemicals, and yet you cannot see that person to get that chemical high. And so you feel withdrawal from these chemicals because you cannot get that fulfillment by being around this person and get that complete high. And so you are experiencing separation anxiety and withdrawal from this experience. It makes the situation much more difficult, especially considering the other things that I've talked about that you go through. It's like the icing on the cake of difficulty, and you don't even know what's going on, but it magnifies everything else that you're going through. One way to deal with that is by focusing on the moment, breathing, doing the things that I talk about in the video I mentioned about anxiety after a breakup. Focus on the moments in front of you. Do not focus so far into the future. That will help with all of this because the fear of loss contributes so much to this chemical change and this chemical withdrawal symptom that if you can remind yourself that you have time, that what you're doing is giving you the best chance to get them back, and that you have time, that time is actually on your side, and if you try to make things move too fast, that you could lose them. It's about reminding yourself, repetition, watching my videos a second or third time just to give you that encouragement, to give you that focus onto what you should be doing instead of focusing on that fear of loss. And that will help with the limerence and the chemical drop that can cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of confusion and pain, emotionally speaking, after a breakup. If you do the things that I talk about, a lot of times the tables turn and you become stronger And your ex becomes the one who feels some of that urgency, some of that anxiety, some of that fear of loss, and they approach you. They move toward you. It doesn't mean that they want it all back at once. Sometimes they're just testing the water a little bit. They're going to see if you'll talk to them, first of all, which is another reason not to ignore them. One of the questions I continue to get in the comment section of my video is, I should ignore my ex when they reach out, right? Or should I respond if they reach out in no contact? I shouldn't, should I? People tend to assume they shouldn't. But what will happen is your ex will hate that rejection. They will fear that rejection, and they won't want to experience it. They will just think, well, I blew it. I've lost this person, and it may cause them some pain, but they're not going to take the ego shot of being ignored much. They're not going to take it many times, usually once or twice at the most, and then you will not hear from them again. And then you're in a terrible position because it's not a position of power. It's not a position of strength for you to be the one to reach out. And so when your ex does reach out, don't ignore them, because that usually means the tables have turned a little bit. They're moving towards you. You want to reward that momentum. It doesn't mean that you say, I'm so glad to hear from you. I've been miserable. It means you're casual and polite, but you don't ignore them so that they know if they want to reach out to you, if they do have that moment, when they have that moment of just realizing they want you back and they want to tell you that, or they want to meet up and just kind of see where things go, they know they can contact you, that it won't be a dead end. And that's another tool in your arsenal, knowing things like that, watching my videos, knowing what you should and should not do, at least to large degree. Just knowing those things gives you a tremendous influence on this process, because at least you're not doing the wrong things. And if you have, at least you know the right direction now. Count that as a blessing, which is another thing that's important to do in this situation, is to focus on the positives that you have in life. And that's another very important thing to do, is to focus on the positives, the blessings that you do have, rather than just the negatives. Reframe your mind to focus on those things, to give yourself a break from the fear of loss and the pain that you're feeling from the breakup. Focus on the positives. Embrace those things. And I talk about that more in my video on anxiety after a breakup and how to get that under control. So take a look at that in the link below. Hit the subscribe button so that you can be notified when I have more videos like this. If this video helped you, you can leave me a tip, and I'll leave a link to my tip jar in the description below. But please give this video a thumbs up, and you are welcome to leave a comment with a question, or just if you appreciated this video. This has been Coach Lee, and as always, thank you for watching.